Eu quero apresentar a nossa palestrante ilustre, Jennifer Jones, que é curadora da Fundação Rotária, foi vice-presidente do Rotary International em 2016, 2017 e moderadora da Assembleia Internacional em San Diego em 2020. Para vocês terem ideia do que é ser uma moderadora da Assembleia Internacional, ela foi responsável pelo treinamento de todos os governadores de distrito do mundo. E ela foi indicada pelo presidente Holger Knack, que poderia indicar qualquer pessoa para ser moderadora. Escolheu a melhor de todas, na visão dele e na nossa também, que é a Jennifer Jones. E além de ter um currículo brilhante como rotariana, ela é empresária, proprietária da Media Street, que foi nomeada como empresa do ano pela Câmara do Comércio de Windsor. Também, ela, no Rotary, ela foi a co-presidente da campanha Polional e muito importante também que ela é casada com o simpático e muito atuante Nick, que é um médico de família local, que também estava conosco na Assembleia Internacional, que é uma pessoa extremamente carismática. E, Jennifer, seja muito bem-vinda à nossa Assembleia Distrital do Distrito 4530 e está agora com a palavra.
Muito obrigado. Luiz Gustavo, thank you so much for the very kind introduction. And District Governor-elect Vera, it is a joy to be able to join your district assembly today and to be able to interact with the leaders of your district. Now, I must tell you that I'm feeling a little bit formal at the moment, and the temperature has gone up in my country today quite a bit. And so I thought perhaps that you wouldn't mind if I changed and only had a t-shirt on instead. Is that okay? I do want to say a very special hello to my colleagues, Director Mario Cesar and my trusty colleague, Ippolito. It's been wonderful to be able to be on the call and hear your remarks in advance. I wish so much that I could speak your beautiful language, and believe me, I am starting to try. But I do want to thank right now Carol, who was on earlier explaining the interpretation so that you can now hear, while I'm speaking English, that you can hear it in Portuguese. And Sandra, who is interpreting for me right now. This is very interesting. Well, you and I'm in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. You and I are about 4,500 miles apart from each other right now. And obviously technology makes this very easy. But Sandra and I actually, while she lives in the United States and I live in Canada, we're probably only about 20 miles apart from each other right now. So while technology is connecting us globally, it's even connecting us when we're very close here, yet with a border between us that remains closed at this time. I have remarks that I would like to share with you. I know we have an hour to spend together, and I'd like to be able to share some thoughts, but then more importantly, I'd really like to get to a point where we can do some more interactive exchange. And I'd love to hear your questions, anything that you would like to talk about today. The power of Rotary connection is what I want to be able to talk to you about. And now more than ever, as you heard Mario Cesar talk about, the technology platforms that we're using are enabling us to be people of action in a way we probably never would have imagined. We've wanted to move clubs into virtual meetings, and we've talked about it a lot, but it really has taken this pandemic to move our cheese, to make us think outside the box, to perhaps break the box and think of things differently. And so I do want to talk with you a little bit today about your own clubs and what you might be thinking about as we move forward. But first, what I thought I would do is also talk a little bit about COVID-19. And I know that in your country that you have been very hard hit. I know that there are many people and many Rotarian friends who I've seen on Facebook who have even been talking about their own journey with the virus and that of their family. And so I want to offer to you my sincere and warmest thoughts for all of you to be safe and to be well and to be healthy. And I hope that right now things are starting to see some improvement. We have some improvement in my country, and we're still somewhat limited in our ability to move. As I mentioned, the border between Canada and the United States, which is really only a 10-minute drive from my home, is closed. And right now it's closed until the end of June, but there is some talk that will go on for a little bit longer. And the case count here has been coming down, but COVID has been very personal for very many of us. And Luis Gustavo mentioned my husband, Nick, and he is a family physician here in our community. And so very quickly, as we, at the beginning of March, is when we really started to lock down in this part of the world. He has a practice with many thousands of patients, and very quickly they moved to a model of just doing telemedicine and being able to take appointments by calls only. And it's worked very well. His patients have been very happy with the care that they've received, as other doctors are doing exactly the same. One of the other things, though, that he does is he looks after a seniors residence. And I don't know if you have the same kind of comparable facilities in Brazil, but this is a nursing home environment for senior residents, some of our most vulnerable citizens, obviously. And in the residence that he looks after, it's a 170-bed rest home, nursing home. And it has been the hardest hit. And they had 70 positive cases of COVID in that nursing home alone. And 30 have already passed, and a very high number of their staff as well. So it became very personal for us. He goes there every 2 weeks. And so trying to figure out a routine of how to bring him back into the house safely. And fortunately, we have the luxury of having an additional bedroom and bathroom where he was able to be able to take care of himself and before reintegrating into our lives. So, I think that all of us, one of the things that I think is so profound about what we've been going through is that every single person on the planet has been touched by this. And there is nothing in our lifetime that has done something so similar, that has given us all the same level of anxiety, that has, while we've seen something that has been the worst in our world, it has also allowed us to see some of the best of humanity. And that has happened, I know, through my lens of looking at things very much because of Rotary. And Rotarians in every corner of the world have stood up in their own homes and said, I want to do something. I want to be part of something bigger than myself. And I know that in my community, I know in yours, I suspect are many people doing the same. People at home sewing masks, creating personal protective equipment for medical professionals, providing food baskets for families who have lost their income. And unfortunately, that is part of what I think is the next phase that we will see as we start to come out of the hardest hitting of the cases, and unfortunately a possible second wave to come in the fall as they're predicting. But part of what I think is going to be so challenging is the economic fallout. And I don't believe, and I think that, all of our wise minds on this call, the Harvard minds, like Hippolito called you, that, we are at a time when we need to be scanning our communities to see who is falling through the cracks and helping to provide infrastructure for business, for families. And in particular, one thing that I think is very important for us to have open dialogue about in our clubs is also mental health issues. As anxiety levels have been so high, there's one study that I saw that the rate of calls to mental health centers has gone up something like 780%. And so as people lose their jobs, as they lose their businesses, as these things happen, it obviously, these are the things, compounded by a global pandemic that cause this for many people to cause great concern. So I talk about doing a scan of your community, but I also want to challenge you to do a scan of your clubs. And as Mario Cesar talked about, that we have been connecting like no other time ever in our history. And one of the things we need to do is to be looking around our clubs and our district to see who isn't participating. And, the 102-year-old Rotarian that Mario Cesar talked about, I've been on a couple of calls with 95-year-old Rotarians and the same. And, I just marvel. I think not only that they're on the call and participating, but what they've seen in their lifetime. For the gentleman that Mario Cesar just talked about, he was just a young 10-year-old when our organization was even formed. To have been able to see all of these different things, one of probably the only few people who could give some perspective on the Spanish flu and the pandemic that hit at that time. Very few people would be able to have that kind of recollection. So it's a really important time for us to look to our clubs to see who is not participating and to encourage them to join us. Because I really honestly, truly believe that this technology platform, whether it's Zoom or some other technology, is not going to go away. And quite candidly, I think this is one of the greatest opportunities for us going forward, because I can see a day when we are able to, reassemble in person, that we perhaps do our meetings differently. I wouldn't be surprised to see traditional clubs that meet weekly move to a model where maybe 2 meetings in a month were in person, maybe 2 virtual. So, you could have 2 virtual meetings where you can bring in a speaker from somewhere else in the world that you would never normally have access to being able to do that. And that can happen not only at the district level, that can happen at the club level. Because we are people of action and because we have the power of connection across the globe, we can open those doors so that our own members can see past their own club experience. And that is one of the magic moments, I think, that happens for people when we see beyond our own club and what is possible and comparing notes with someone in another country. It's a wonderful opportunity to be able to do that. So say, for example, that you had 2 virtual meetings, then 2 in-person meetings. Maybe one is a hands-on service project, and maybe one is a club social. Because we know from the research that we join and we stay in Rotary because of our friendships and because of service. So when we want our Rotarians to be engaged, giving them what it is that we know they want is very important. So I challenge you to look at your club, to think differently. Yes, I believe that traditions are very important, but it's also a time right now that we have the ability to change and to look at what makes us the best, the brightest, and the most relevant as we move forward. So I want to touch on 1 or 2 last things, and then I want to get into our question and answer opportunity. As a trustee of the foundation, I know that Hipólito was able to give you an update, and I was listening in on him talking about global grants and district designated funds and different things like this. I want to touch a little bit more and expand upon polio. And polio, as you obviously know, is our single most largest corporate initiative. It is the #1 corporate priority in terms of fundraising and project movement within Rotary. So as COVID came into our world a couple of months ago, one of the things that happened was that we have a polio infrastructure that we have formed across over 70 countries in the world, primarily in parts of Asia and Africa and India, parts of the world in that region. More than 70 countries where we have polio health infrastructure that we, as part of the Global Polio Eradication Initiative, have been able to create over the past 3+ decades. And as this pandemic struck, we were able to take the polio frontline workers, the thousands and thousands of these workers, and pivot and turn them from polio workers into COVID workers. Now, this is a story that I think we should be shouting from the rafters about the relevance of our organization to be able to help tackle this pandemic. And we know from past experience that when the Ebola outbreak happened in Nigeria, it is this exact same infrastructure that was able to shut Ebola down. Now, we know that in the DRC, that there is another outbreak of Ebola that is taking place right now, the Democratic Republic of Congo. And so, you know, there are lots of things going on in the world, but one thing for certain is that we have made a promise to eradicating this disease. Now, unfortunately, because of COVID, we have had to take a brief pause in immunizations. And that is not a good thing, because clearly we need to make sure that the over 400 million children that need to be immunized each year receive these valuable drops. However, at the same time that we've paused on immunizations, we have been able to continue, because of these COVID workers, doing surveillance, the very important work of surveillance. And that is not only for polio, in the sewage systems, the water systems, the environment in communities, but now also COVID, that they're being able to contact trace and to be able to determine and locate outbreaks in real time. And so, yes, we've had to take a little bit of a step back, but we will get the job done, and progress has been made. And one of the things I want to share with you today, and you may know this or you may not, but we are coming up now, well, let me preface it by saying that we have 3 endemic countries: Nigeria, Afghanistan, and Pakistan. Nigeria is coming up on close to 4 years without another case of polio. And this means that certification for them to remove them off of the endemic list is imminent. It's within the next couple of months at most. And not only does that mean that Nigeria is polio-free, it means the entire African continent is polio-free. And isn't that something that we can celebrate? It leaves us with Pakistan and Afghanistan, and we certainly have had struggles in these areas. And we've been making progress. And, you know, just prior to the pandemic hitting, some of our senior leaders, our President-elect Holger and our past President Ravi Ravindran from Sri Lanka, and the chair of the International Polio Plus Committee, Mike McGovern, they all went to Pakistan and met with the president of the country, Imran Khan, and he gave the full weight of the government and said, we are behind you. We will get this done. And they also had the head of the Defense Department there at the same time. Similar discussions taking place in Afghanistan. And that is important, because we need these governments to be on board, because until every last case is done, every child is vulnerable. And so we need to make sure that we cross the finish line. It is going to take, a lot of work. It's not an easy job, but I share this with you today because if your club has done a polio fundraiser, if you have participated yourself in a national immunization day, if you have even just told your friends about polio, you are part of something so much bigger than yourself. You are part of a movement, something that is going to change the course of history. And that's what Rotary gives us, the ability to be part of this powerful, powerful connection. So let me perhaps, well, you know what? There is one other thought that I wanted to talk about, and that was diversity. Let me just quickly squeeze this in, and then let's get into questions and answers. And I'm not sure who's going to moderate that. Luis, Gustavo, will you do that?
Yes, sure, I can do it.
Okay. I'll finish on one more thought, and then we can move into questions. So one of the last things that I wanted to talk with you, and this goes back now into another comment that I wanted to build upon that Mario spoke about, and that's membership and the growth that you're seeing. The numbers that he referenced, the almost equal number of men to women who are joining Rotary, and that is diversity. And that is one of our core values, and that is one of the largest strengths of our organization. And for a very long time, we have been, well, and most specifically, let me frame the last 5 or 6 years, we have put very specific metrics into place, measuring, bringing in women, increasing the role of women in Rotary, and also members under the age of 40, trying to develop our young professional network. Clearly, we've made incredible progress with Rotaract, becoming a much tighter, closer part of our family. But diversity is very fundamental. But while we've talked about this, from a global perspective, we've not really moved the needle very much. It's been negligible, to be quite candid. I'm thrilled to hear the numbers that were shared of the equity in terms of members coming in. And I'm not wanting to talk to you today about why you have to have more women. What I want to talk with you about is the fact that we have strength in our organization because we have diverse perspectives. We all think differently about things. And because of that, that allows us to solve some of the world's most pressing challenges, like polio. And so, you know, we have different vocations. And because of that, we bring different perspective. Our gender, because of that, we bring different perspective. Age, because of that, we bring different perspective. All of that allows us to be better at tackling all of these different things. And you know, when we talk about bringing younger members and women in, it's really because they're just underrepresented. And we know that there is an opportunity in our communities to be able to grow and to bring these people in to a valuable life of service. And, you know, one of the things that I like to talk about is that, you know, while we have a focus on bringing younger members in, I really honestly, truly believe that we're looking for young thinkers. Have you met a 25-year-old who's old? Have you met a 102-year-old who is young? Yeah, you know what I'm saying. It's about the way that we think. And we need people of every age. President-elect Holger says right now, there is no wrong age to join Rotary. And I believe that is very, very true. We all bring something at a different point in our life, regardless of gender. At different points in our life, you know, when we're younger, we bring energy, we bring vitality, we bring leadership. You know, later on in this part of our life, we maybe have more resources. We have life experience. We're able to mentor and cross-mentor with our younger members as well. So I wanted to talk that little bit about diversity with you. And now let's open up the floor to questions. And I am very happy to talk about anything with regard to the Rotary Foundation. Hipólito covered it very nicely, so I touched on a couple of different things instead. But whether it has to do with our organization, with the Rotary Foundation, personal questions, I'd be glad to answer anything.
Quem quiser fazer pergunta, por gentileza, levante a mão no Raise Hand, lá em participantes, ok? E também pedimos que as perguntas sejam curtas e que façam no modo português, porque se fizer no modo inglês, estando no português, não vai ser traduzido, ok? Então, façam a pergunta em português, que a Sandra irá traduzir para a Jennifer. Alberto Palombo, pode falar, por favor.
Muchas gracias, diretora Jennifer. Eu tinha preparado as perguntas já em inglês, né? Mas eu vou fazer bem na recomendação do nosso coordenador, Luiz Gustavo. Ok. Muito obrigado por sua liderança e as suas palavras muito bondadosas para os rotarianos que estamos na linha da frente nos projetos humanitários. Adorei os seus comentários sobre a mudança do Rotary com essas novas ferramentas. E realmente eu estou escrevendo muito sobre a questão do Rotary com esse novo normal, the new normal Rotary. Mas veja, no coração do Rotary, como já foi mencionado pelo diretor Mário César, são os clubes, né? Alguns clubes realmente têm uma grande dificuldade em adotar tecnologia. A minha preocupação como rotariano é precisamente o gap, né? Que pode acontecer entre os clubes que adotam tecnologia e os que não, né? Até para poder servir melhor a nossa sociedade, nós temos que realmente utilizar, inclusive, as tecnologias que a sociedade demanda para poder servir de uma forma apropriada e no momento, porque uma questão também que é muito comum hoje é que o chamado life cycle, né? A tecnologia está chegando tão rápido que muitas vezes as nossas soluções, se nós não adotarmos a tecnologia, então vão não ser tão úteis. E o Rotary fica, digamos, em uma posição não na vanguarda, mas como muito demorado na curva de adoção e de poder servir. Eu gostaria de ouvir seus comentários, porque, pelo que eu ouvi da sua apresentação, você conhece bastante o tema. Obrigado pelas suas palavras.
Obrigada, Alberto. Let me ask you, before I answer the question, the background that you have. What river are we looking at?
That's the Araguaia River.
Beautiful. It looks like a place I would love to be. I appreciate your comments very much about technology. And as I mentioned earlier, you know, this has been a horrific thing that we've gone through. But in every terrible thing, I think probably we can all reflect upon it at some point in our life. There's always that silver lining that we talk about that comes out of it. And this has empowered us to utilize technology in a very, very different way than we've ever done before. Sure, we may have had, you know, a FaceTime meeting with someone or whatever, but we have full permission to broadcast from our living rooms right now. And that doesn't change the way that we're perceived. We see newscasters in their homes. We see our world leaders in their homes. This is a very different leveling of how we can all communicate with each other. On one of the calls that I was on this week, I heard one of the best pieces of advice. And so for club presidents or district leadership, this is one that was a great takeaway for me. And that was a club that had very quickly, as the pandemic struck, they created a new position in their club, a technology chair. And having someone who it was their responsibility to make sure that they were doing that scan of the club that I talked about. And so that they could reach out to someone, you know, if you notice that someone hasn't been on a call for several weeks, it might be because they just don't know how to use the technology. I know, you know, with my mom and my dad, I've, you know, not been able to be with them in person, but we've spent a lot of time, you know, going over the technology because they're nervous about it. They don't know, because my mom doesn't use technology like this all the time. She thinks if she pushes a button, everything's going to disappear. And so, we've had to go through that. And so I know that there are others out there that feel that way. Having someone in your club who can mentor and teach and make it a normal experience for people, I think is just a golden opportunity. Thank you for the question.
Obrigado, Jennifer. Francisco Torcati, por favor. Pode liberar seu mudo. Ok. Pode falar.
Boa tarde, Jennifer. Meu nome é Francisco Torcati, estou como presidente do Rotary Clubs de Campos Belos. E a minha pergunta seria, dentro dessa vertente ainda de ferramentas que o Rotary International disponibiliza, mas no sentido de captação de parceiros para projetos de subsídios globais da Fundação Rotária. Eu me encontro em um momento em que estou com um projeto em andamento, em fase de financiamento, e sei que o Rotary Ideas será descontinuado no próximo dia 1º de julho. E o Rotary Ideas era um espaço, uma ferramenta disponibilizada pelo Rotary International para buscar essas parcerias com outros clubes, parceiros internacionais, e até mesmo empresas que quisessem fazer doações. Você sabe me dizer se a Fundação Rotária está trabalhando em uma nova ferramenta para tentar juntar quem tem projeto com quem tem FEDUC disponível, ou o contrário também, quem não tem FEDUC, mas tem projeto e está em busca de financiamento?
Sure. Thank you so much for the question, Francesco. So let me, without getting too deep into the weeds, let me explain that the change that was made by the trustees to remove the cash match was not done lightly. It was done because, and this is going to sound crazy, we're a product of our success. And in 2013, when we first launched global grants as we see them now, they have become wildly popular. And, so much so that there is more request than we have of money to give. And so we had to take a serious look at how we could make a couple of changes to make sure that it's fair to all concerned. And so this is one change that I will say, if we find ourselves in a stronger economic position, and that would be in large part because of the endowment that we're creating right now. We have an endowment that we have been striving to create by 2025 of $2.25 billion. And once that is actualized, that will provide us with a lot of additional funding for projects in all corners of the world. But that is still a couple of years away before we actualize that. We're about 450-60 million in cash in that endowment right now. And we have about 800 million in expectancies. So once those Rotarians go on to higher service and have generously left behind a legacy gift, that will then be added into the endowment fund. So we need time for that to build in order to be able to access the revenue that generates. So when that happens, the cash match, I could see perhaps coming back into the equation again. I could see that perhaps happening. In the short term, though, I think we need, all of us, myself included, I'm working on a grant. We all need to adjust to what our reality is with this change. Now, that being said, let me share with you this. This is something that you have likely not heard. So district designated funds, and I won't get into a discussion about exactly what they are. If that is an unfamiliar term to you, please seek out talking to one of your leaders in your district and they can best explain it to you. It is a way in which we are able to utilize our dollars, the dollars that have come back to us through our donations. And right now, we have somewhere between, globally, $53 and $55 million of unused DDF. And so when you're looking to try and find a partner, what we need to be doing is finding districts that are keeping their DDF and not spending it. because Rotarians donate generously to the foundation because they want their money to do good in the world. They want to finance projects. But some districts believe that if they hold on to their district designated funds, it's like a bank account or a savings account. And if you don't spend it, you're not able to do good in the world. So taking a look at, having conversations perhaps with leadership that supports your district. You have a regional Rotary Foundation coordinator, and they have assistance. They have access to who has DDF in your own country. And then in terms of finding out, districts in other parts of the world, much of that is about the relationships that we have with each other and finding out, how we can find partners. Because believe me, even though there's not a cash match, there is a lot of district designated funds that can be accessed that could help fill that gap.
Okay. Muito obrigado, Jennifer. Governador Demetrios. Vamos aguardar a conexão do Ronaldo, ok? Demetrios, por favor.
Boa tarde a todos. Boa tarde, governadora Vera. Parabéns pela excelente Assembleia, pelos excelentes expositores, né? Seja muito bem-vinda, Jennifer, ao nosso distrito. É um prazer muito grande ouvi-la. O Ronaldo falou da camisa, eu iria falar também, elogiar essa camisa bonita que você está usando. Obrigado por nos prestigiar, principalmente nesse momento triste das nossas histórias, né, da nossa América do Sul e América do Norte. Na realidade, eu não tenho uma pergunta, eu teria uma colocação nem tanto afeita à Fundação Rotária. Eu queria ouvir a sua opinião das nossas oportunidades, já que o lema é esse, que se abrem nesse momento para que possamos aumentar o nosso quadro associativo, trazendo jovens que têm intimidade com a informática, jovens que têm a intimidade com as nossas plataformas de comunicação que estão ao nosso dispor hoje, e também trazer os antigos que, por um motivo ou outro, deixaram de frequentar os nossos clubes presencialmente. E conseguindo esses objetivos, nós vamos conseguir mais contribuições para a nossa Fundação Rotária. É uma colocação e gostaria da sua apreciação sobre esse assunto. Muito obrigado.
Well, thank you, Demetrius. Yes, I think that very much, looking at how we bring people in is something that all clubs need to take a serious look at. It is an opportunity right now. I believe this is an opportunity for growth in our organization because we are showcasing our relevance and people want to take action. If you look at in the United Kingdom, they've had something like, I can't remember the number, 400 million or 500 million volunteers to their National Health Service that just stepped forward right away and said, we want to be part of helping. And these are people who are Rotarians that just don't know it yet. And, they live a life of service, but don't understand that they are already in their hearts Rotarians. We need to identify them. But more than that, and this is perhaps the direct answer to your question, more than that is that right now, this is an opportunity for us to take a very serious look at our clubs and to see whether they're working or not. Because one of the things that we can do is that we can ask people to join. We can tell them that it's the greatest thing in the world. But if they arrive at a meeting and we don't deliver on that promise, then they leave. And so, that saying, I know that, this translates, it's not the way we do it. It's not the way we've always done it. Some of that can lead to paralysis of thinking. And so taking a look at, the kinds of things that we do in our weekly meetings or bi-weekly meetings, however you meet, to make sure that they match and align with the people who are in attendance. If people don't, if you're a singing club and people don't like to sing, that doesn't work. So you have to take a serious look, I think, at what it is. And most importantly, I think the best thing that we can do is that when someone joins Rotary, that we ask them, what do you want from this experience? And then deliver the result and make sure that what it is that they wanted out of their experience, that we help them to cultivate that and that we give them the opportunity to lead, because we bring leaders in and we make them better leaders. Every one of us joined this organization and has had some way that your leadership opportunity has grown profoundly. Think of the opportunity for members of any age to become better public speakers, better board members, and understanding governance, better understanding perhaps event planning or finances. These are all things that we offer as skill development, as the value of being a member of our organization, that they can take back into their vocational lives. So this is a very important question, Dimitris, that you've asked. And I think that it is a really good opportunity right now for us to be honest in how we look at our clubs, and are we the relevant, vibrant club that we know we can be, or do we need to make some tweaks?
Muito obrigado, Jennifer. Ronaldo, do Rotary Clubs de Anhanguera.
Parabéns, governadora Vera, Hipólito, Mário César, excelente palestra. Parabéns, Jennifer, pela mensagem que você trouxe até nós. Eu sou Ronaldo, do Rotary Club Goiânia, Anhanguera, e gostaria de saber como você vê essa dificuldade que o Rotary está tendo de chegar aí a 1.300.000.000 de rotarianos.
Oh, Ronaldo, this is a good question. I think that in terms of growing, I mean, grow Rotary is certainly the key phrase right now. And it's something that our president, Mark Maloney, speaks about with such passion, growing our organization. And I think one of the greatest ways that we can do this is through our public image, sharing with people in our communities what it is that we do. And when we put the human face on what it is that we do, other people want to join with us. They hear a story that of something that we've done, and they have the opportunity to say, wow, I would have done that. I want to be part of something like that. And so right now, telling our stories is very important. And in the midst of this pandemic, I know Rotarians in your country have been incredibly active in making sure that things have been, you've been helping your hospitals, you've been helping your citizens. These are stories to share. These are stories to, let people know that we are people of action. And the more that we can do that, that to me, I think is our absolute #1 magic bullet to getting new members in the door, is sharing those stories. I said at the beginning today, talking about the power of connection. Let me tell you just a very, very quick story. And, when I'm talking with Youth Exchange, frequently, I reference this story. So let me tell you, I should have mentioned this at the beginning of the call. I do have a very special place in my heart for Brazil, because my very first Youth Exchange son was from Juiz de Fora. And he is a very special part of our life, even to this day. That was back in the year 2000. And he lives in New Zealand now. We've been back and forth to each other's homes. We're family. We're absolutely family. And so this is I think this is a charming story, and hopefully one that will, the interpretation will resonate. But when he arrived here in Canada, he was, for the first couple of months, his English was very good, certainly better than my Portuguese. And, but he was struggling at school because he felt like he wasn't necessarily fitting in. I know that he was having difficulty. And you know, every night we would just sit together and we would talk, and, you know, we'd watch TV. My husband and his name is Leo. We would sit and just watch TV together, or we'd go out and do activities, and slowly but surely things started to improve. And, you know, back in Brazil, he was the guy, the it guy. Like, you know, at high school, he had the girlfriends and the parties and everything else. So, you know, coming to a country and not having that experience was very challenging. So it was Christmas Eve, and we were coming home from midnight mass, and Leo was in the back seat, and it was one of these magical kind of nights. The first time he had seen snow was here in Canada, and on that night the snow was falling so gently. And if you've ever seen one of those little globe toys that you can shake and the snow just kind of drops down, that's what it felt like. We were in one of those little shaky toys. And from the back seat, he said, "Nick, Jen, I want to tell you something." And I said, "What's that, Leo?" And he said, "I love you." And so then Nick said, "What do you want, Leo?" And and he said, "No, you don't understand." He said, "This is what you've taught me. This is the gift that you have given me." And, you know, at that moment, it was one of those, you know, when you think of the paychecks that we get through our involvement in Rotary, through the connections that we make with each other, that's one of the biggest paychecks I've ever received, was that gift. And obviously now, 2 decades later, it still continues to pay dividends. These are the kinds of things that we need to tell people about, the impact that it touches us personally and how it makes us better people. So thank you very much, Ronaldo, for the question.
Obrigado, Jennifer. Chico Schlabitz, governador Chico.
Jennifer.
Ah! How are you?
Jennifer, bom te ver aqui, próximo à minha casa, dentro da minha casa, eu estou dentro da tua casa, maravilhoso, tudo isso que a tecnologia nos permite. E falando em tecnologia, eu gostaria de dizer que até hoje as convenções de Rotary não conseguiram alcançar um número superior a 45, 46 mil pessoas. Neste ano, nós temos uma convenção totalmente virtual que acontecerá e que cálculos que eu fiz hoje, dependendo de nós, poderemos ter algo em torno de 3 a 4 milhões de pessoas, se cada um de nós convidar 1 ou 2 pessoas do nosso relacionamento. E, com isso, eu pergunto para você, nós não deveremos reforçar para que todos os rotarianos tragam mais pessoas para ver este grande evento promovido por Rotary, para mostrar para essas pessoas e para, em ato contínuo, atrairmos gente, já em julho, para dentro do nosso Rotary? Você não acha que é uma grande oportunidade que nós temos em nossa mão? Muito obrigado.
Absolutely. So good to see you, Chico. And yes, seeing each other in our homes is nice, but seeing each other, being in each other's homes and sharing a meal would be much better. And a caipirinha. See, I do know some language. You bring up a very important point, and that is our virtual convention, which will be held June 20th to the 26th. And President Mark Maloney is making a claim that this will be the biggest convention ever. Albeit virtually, it'll be the largest ever. And I think that he's right. it's an opportunity for us not only to make sure that our club members know how they can participate, and you can do that easily by going to riconvention.org, and it has the full program and the speakers. Certainly on the 20th and the 21st, there will be general sessions on either of those days, and then the remaining days will be breakout sessions, and they will all be held in all of Rotary's official languages, including Portuguese. So members can attend and have this experience without ever spending a dollar. And this is a really great opportunity. One of the other things that will be a wonderful opportunity is that all of those will be recorded, and even the breakout sessions will be recorded. So after the fact, they may turn into wonderful club programs where, you know, you get a group together and you just sit and watch it, you know, a topic like membership or, you know, any number of different things, technology that are going to be talked about as breakout sessions, and help to continue that dialogue. So I do encourage all of you on the call to make sure that you direct and share this information with your fellow club members, because it is a wonderful opportunity for people to be able to see the entire world of Rotary come together in one place at one time. And even though it will be without, you know, in-person hugs, it will be a big virtual hug. And I am just so glad to see you. This is awesome. Yay. A good surprise.
Obrigado, Jennifer. O Francisco Torcati tem mais uma pergunta. Pode falar, Francisco.
Jennifer, sou eu mais uma vez. Na minha primeira pergunta, eu me esqueci de incluir um complemento. Eu fico muito feliz de saber que as mulheres, principalmente aqui no Brasil, têm entrado em números muito parecidos com os homens. Mas há poucos dias atrás eu estive conversando com o Chico Chilap, inclusive, sobre a possibilidade de nós termos novamente um presidente de Rotary International brasileiro. E aí conversamos sobre as dificuldades do momento. Mas a minha pergunta para você é o seguinte: o nosso atual cenário, qual a probabilidade e a previsão de termos uma presidente de Rotary Internacional mulher?
Sure, a great question. And, you know, one of the things that, and like I said earlier, when Mario said the numbers, that was wonderful to be able to hear that, that you have men and women coming in around at the same numbers. I think probably the most important thing that I can say in answering that question is that we need to make sure, in my opinion, we need to make sure that we are looking you know, in our districts, in our clubs, for the best and the brightest leaders. And that's men and women. It's not about, you know, just trying to push women forward. But we do have an opportunity right now to look and see with these new members the talent that they bring. And, you know, if we can cultivate members to become club presidents, then maybe after they're a club president, they decide they'd like to be like Vera. They want to be a district governor. And after they have had the opportunity to serve as a district governor, then the next opportunity for leadership is to become a director of Rotary International, like Mario Cesar. And like I served from 2015 to 2017. Once you have completed that task, that is when you're eligible to be nominated or to have your name put forward to run for president of Rotary International. I would love dearly to see a Brazilian man or woman who would be the president of our organization. I know that that would be something that your country would celebrate immensely. And I do think that we will see a woman as Rotary International president, but not because she's a woman, because she is a qualified Rotarian. And that is, I think, probably the most important thing I can say in with regard to that, is that we're looking for the right person, not just to check a box to say that we put a female there. That would be a disservice to men and women around the world. So I do think that we'll see it, and I hope it's soon.
Ok, Jennifer, agora vai ser a última pergunta. O governador Demetrios, novamente. Demetrios.
Eu estou aproveitando a carona do Torcati aqui, ele fez duas, eu também tenho direito, é uma reivindicação. E até havia me esquecido, porque era para ter emenda. A gente não pode perder uma oportunidade como esta, ela caiu do céu. Obrigado pela sua presença aqui. Eu queria fazer uma pergunta, eu sou coordenador assistente de imagem pública aqui na nossa Zona 28, e a gente sente uma falta muito grande, não de apoio, porque o apoio do Rotary a gente até tem, colocamos agora uma nova funcionária aqui no Ribo, que nos dá um apoio interessante na imagem pública. Mas por que o Rotary não passa, em um determinado momento, a investir pesadamente em imagem pública, tal qual as nossas organizações irmãs, Médicos Sem Fronteira, WWF e outras mais que a gente conhece? Não poderíamos pegar uma parte dos rendimentos ou das doações do Rotary e investir em imagem pública?
It's a very good question. I'm glad that you came back onto the call to ask it. So let me do a baseline level set here for a second. You shared with all of us that you're an assistant RPIC. There are likely people on the call who don't know what that necessarily means, an assistant Rotary Public Image Coordinator. And, you know, our organization has so many acronyms that it is very challenging for Rotarians to keep straight all of the different jobs and all of the different things that we do. But the Public Image Coordinator team in your district, in your region, is such a valuable resource. And I'm speaking now to all of you club presidents and club leaders. Demetris is a resource for you. If you're looking for more information about the tools that are available to you to increase your public image, to make sure that you have a professional face that you put forward, Rotary has an entire brand center that has all of these already produced for you that you can take full advantage of. And one of the benefits of that is that if we start to use these materials club by club, we start to build strength of brand because we have a unified look and feel and touch. Can you imagine if every McDonald's in the world looked differently? It wouldn't have the strength of its brand. So if we can look at those tools and utilize those tools, generally speaking, we don't have to spend any money on doing something like that. So that's a really important thing for clubs to be able to know that this exists and how to tap into it. There are public service announcements for radio, for television, for print, sample billboards, people of action ads in all of Rotary's languages. These are things you could put up on your social media right now without even having to spend a dime. Now, we are doing, very quickly, I'll just tell you, we are doing a pilot right now of some public service announcements and have a spend that has been allocated to doing that to test exactly what you're talking about. It's a difficult balancing act because, you know, people give us money to do good in the world. And sometimes you could imagine you would get pushback on, well, I wanted that to save a life, and not necessarily understanding that through public image, we could increase membership and donations, which would help us save more lives. Drawing that connection for some people to spending money in public image can sometimes be a challenge. But it is a valuable way for us to be able to share our stories. And so we need to look at ways to cultivate our relationships with local media, to be able to give to them these resources that we have. Because, you know, many television stations, radio stations, newspapers, they have space available in many countries. And I don't know the rules and regulations in Brazil, but I know in my own country, they have an obligation to give so much free time away as a public service to the community. And so if we can give them professional tools that, you know, maybe all we had to do is put a club logo on the end or a district logo, then what a benefit without even having to spend money. So I would start there as a first part of it, but I would also encourage you as clubs, as districts, to take a look at how you want to support public image. And if you believe that there is an expenditure that could be used to support it, I would encourage you wholeheartedly. I think it's a very wise thing to do, and thank you for bringing up that topic. I know that was our last question, and I know that before I give it away, I just want to very sincerely thank Sandra for the interpretation today, and I want to make a distinction here. You know, there's people who refer to our wonderful Rotary and I'm making her talk about herself. This is funny. Some people refer to our interpreters as translators, that they're translating language. What Sandra does and what her colleagues do is that they interpret what I'm saying to make sure that it resonates properly in your language. And this is a very, very important designation and significant difference between the two. And it is a lot for her to have just spent an hour and a half, first in English, sharing with me Hipólito and Mario Cesar's speeches, but then also to spend an hour now going in the reverse direction. And so I just want you to understand the magnitude of, I think, the task that she had and how appreciative I am for that. And also to Governor-elect Vera, that we had a chance to obviously intersect a little bit while we were at the International Assembly in San Diego, but I wish you the best of luck in the year ahead. It will be a different year, but there are many opportunities, as Holger has already laid out ahead of us. And I know that your team, all of them on the call here, are ready to support you, and you're ready to support them, and I'm ready to support you all in any way that I can. So thank you so much for allowing me to be part of your meeting today, and the best of luck in this year ahead.
Vamos aplaudi-la?
Uma salva de palmas para Jennifer e para Sandra, que gentilmente está cedendo essas horas para a gente. Tá? Muito obrigado, Sandra. Muito obrigado, Jennifer.